Government's first duty is to protect the people, not run their lives. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. The most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government, and I'm here to help." We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. There are no great limits to growth because there are no limits of human intelligence, imagination, and wonder. When you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. Government does not solve problems, it subsidizes them. Don't be afraid to see what you see. We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty, rather than the lawbreaker. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted, it belongs to the brave. Government always finds a need for whatever money it gets. Heroes may not be braver than anyone else. They're just braver 5 minutes longer. We should measure welfare success by how many people leave welfare, not by how many are added. Surround yourself with great people. Delegate authority. Get out of the way. Entrepreneurs and their small enterprises are responsible for almost all the economic growth in the United States. A nation that cannot control its borders is not a nation. There is no security, no safety in the appeasement of evil. Status quo, is Latin for the mess we're in. If history teaches anything, it teaches that self-delusion in the face of unpleasant facts is folly. Democracy is worth dying for because it's the most deeply honorable form of government ever devised by man. The problem is not that people are taxed too little. The problem is that government spends too much. If we ever forget that we are one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. Trust, but verify. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. Government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. We will always remember. We will always be proud. We will always be prepared, so we will always be free. Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He is the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. You can tell a lot about a fellow's character by his way of eating jelly beans. We have the duty to protect the life of an unborn child. There are no constraints on the human mind, no walls around the human spirit, no barriers to our progress except those we ourselves erect. Evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. Freedom is the right to question and change the established way of doing things. We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. I have left orders to be awakened at any time in case of national emergency, even if I'm in a cabinet meeting. There are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. Some people wonder all their lives if they've made a difference. The Marines don't have that problem. It isn't so much that liberals are ignorant, it's just that they know so much that isn't so. History teaches that war begins when governments believe the price of aggression is cheap. One way to make sure crime doesn't pay would be to let the government run it. Without freedom, there is no prosperity. Freedom is one of the deepest and noblest aspirations of the human spirit. To sit back hoping that someday, someone, somewhere will make things right is to go on feeding the crocodile, hoping he will eat you last. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government. If we lose freedom here, there is no place to escape to. We must never remain silent in the face of tyranny. No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. If more government is the answer, then it was a really stupid question. Democracy is not a fragile flower. Still, it needs cultivating. Freedom and opportunity are precious gifts that must be passed on. It's true, hard work never killed anybody, but I figure, why take the chance? Protecting the rights of even the least individual among us is basically the only excuse the government has for even existing. No arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. America is too great for small dreams. The best minds are not in government. If any were, business would steal them away. We do not have a $1 trillion debt because we haven't taxed enough. We have a $1 trillion debt because we spend too much. If past history was all there was to the game, the richest people would be librarians. Freedom is not for the faint of heart. We must be cautious in claiming that what is true for one time is true for all times. The American dream is not that every man must be level with every other man. The American dream is that every man must be free to become whatever God intends he should become. The trouble with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. There are no guarantees of success, only a guarantee of the freedom to try. A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his. The most valuable lesson I learned as governor was that the taxpayer has more sense than politicians do. You can't be for big government, big taxes, and big bureaucracy and still be for the little guy. No weapon in the world is as formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. The best social safety net is a strong family and a good job. We don't have a $1 trillion debt because we haven't taxed enough. We have a $1 trillion debt because we spend too much. America is and always will be a shining city on a hill. We will continue to be a beacon of hope for the world as long as we remain true to our values. Our people are not a burden to be borne by government. Our government is a burden to be borne by the people. The size of the federal budget is not an appropriate barometer of social conscience or charitable concern. Welfare's purpose should be to eliminate, as far as possible, the need for its own existence. A taxpayer is someone who works for the federal government but doesn't have to take a civil service exam. There is no greater happiness for a man than approaching a door at the end of a day knowing someone on the other side is waiting for him. The American way is not to give in to fear, but to face it head on. If you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years, there'd be a shortage of sand. We must never be afraid to speak the truth. The future is best decided by ballots, not bullets. The success of our nation depends on the character of its people. Freedom is not something to be secured in any one moment of time. We must struggle to preserve it every day. If we ever forget what we stand for, we will cease to be who we are. The best days of America are still ahead of us. The duty we owe to our country is to keep it strong and free. A people who forget their past have no future. No government can match the power of individual initiative. There is nothing wrong with America that we can't fix with what is right with America. I believe the American people are ready to take on any challenge if government just gets out of the way. If the federal government were a business, it would have been bankrupt years ago. The strength of America is not in its government, but in its people. The biggest mistake you can make is to believe you work for someone else. Some see government as a referee. I see it as a rule book, not a player in the game. Let us pledge to each other that we will not let America decline on our watch. We must not measure success by what government gives, but by what people achieve. If America is to remain great, we must remain a nation of risk-takers and dreamers. America is too great for small dreams.